Cool. Hello. Happy February. Welcome to Sprint 53. This is our second 2-week sprint this year, and we'll tell you what we've done in the last 2 weeks. Next slide. So this is the overview. I don't think it changes from sprint to sprint, but I'll just repeat it. I'll do the statistics. Carol will give us an update on the community. Dan on the classic UI, Chris on the service UI, Gregg on providers, Gregg M on other providers and automate, Gregg T on platform, and Alberto on the REST API. Next slide. All right. So this sprint we had almost 150 pull requests merged into the main repo. Of that, the biggest slice of the pie there is the enhancements, followed by bugs. If I do the math there, that's about 94, so that's roughly 2/3 of those two, and then everything else is sprinkled around with refactoring, tech debt, and performance, and developer stuff and tests. Next slide, please. We do a breakdown by category. The biggest one is the provider, 39. Then the core with 20. Or actually, there's the API with 21, then the core with 20. Then there's 12 on the UI. It's quite interesting since the UI repo has been split, but I'm expecting that number to go down to close to 0. And then we had 9 in, automate, 9 in chargeback. So pretty good distribution, but again, the bulk were in the providers, the core, and the REST API. Next slide, please. So not only did we merge 146 PRs in the main repo, we now manage, how many is it, Jason, now? 70-something repos? Is that what it is?
We have, in the ManageIQ umbrella, there's 77 repos, and then of the ManageIQ dash ones, there's 14.
Okay. Growing number there. And I think that number will increase with going forward this year as we split out more and more repos out of the main repository. So 432 pull requests merged across all the ManageIQ repos. 70 by the QE team in the integration test repo. The classic UI had 66 PRs merged. Service UI had 46 PRs merged. Amazon provider had 16. I see there's some work afoot on the bot, so that guy had 14 merged. And then single digits for the other 4 there in the top 10 list. Next slide, please. All right, over to Carol.
All right, hi, thanks. Is my audio clear enough?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so we've had a pretty busy week and also coming up quite a lot of events. So I just realized that maybe I should have done 2 slides instead of 1 because I tried to squeeze everything into 1 slide. So next time I'll do better. So just recently, over the weekend, we've had DevConf in Brno, Czech Republic, and it was really exciting event. For me, it's my first time, and both for the event and Brno, so it's pretty cool. And I've had also a lot of people helping me out, so thank you very much for those of you who helped out in ways big and small. I think what's really cool is that it's not just about showing ManageIQ to people who might be outside of Red Hat, but we also met many people within Red Hat who may not be familiar with our project, and to let them know about it. And we had quite a interesting time setting up a ManageIQ demo with OpenStack. The OpenStack guys, they had a booth there as well, and they had their stuff running, and we connected to them live. And anyway, you can see some of these happenings and activities through the tweets if you have been following us through the weekend. If not, it's collected in this Twitter Moments thing with the link there. Lots of pictures, including also the links to the videos of Mulitae's talk on ManageIQ and Ansible, as well as David's lightning talk on the first day. So all around, really great event. And thanks again for those who contributed. Oh, and also I've received through the event people who are kind of curious to learn more about ManageIQ and invite us to attend meetups in different cities and locations to learn more about ManageIQ. So if any of you are interested to speak at these kind of meetups, let me know. I can match you with locations near you or events that are more of an interest. So just let me know. All right. So then just 2 days ago on Monday we had there was actually a meetup in Madrid. It's OpenShift, but they talked about ManageIQ and CloudForms and about what does a cloud management platform bring to OpenShift. I heard there's a video for that talk, but I don't have the link yet. Once I have it, I'll share it. For the upcoming events this weekend, some of us will be at FOSDEM, which is another huge open source event, especially here in Europe. There's one ManageIQ related talk by Piotr. He's going to talk about managing containers, container infrastructure with ManageIQ. And that's on the first day, one of the first talks of the day. We don't have a ManageIQ booth there, but I'll probably hang around some of the Red Hat upstream project booths like Ovirt and Gluster, and then I'll bring some ManageIQ swag there. So if you know anyone who is going there, let them know. And then we have 2 events coming up in Asia. One is PyCon Pune, and I want to thank Aziza for helping out a great deal in that on this event. She's doing setting up things for the booth and making sure there's people manning the booth and preparing some demos and presentations for that as well. And then FOSS Asia in Singapore, I managed to get my talk accepted. So it will be, so for some of you who may not know, I'm from Singapore, so it would be nice to go back and see some of my friends, as well as to share about ManageIQ with people from my home country. Then there's also, I think I mentioned this already previously as well, the Cloud Native Con or KubeCon in Berlin. There's an OpenShift Commons gathering the day before, same location, and Sergio will be representing ManageIQ there. More events coming up later on in the year, and we'll hop back to the other side of the pond to the US at some point, but these are at least in the near future, these are the events. And then, last but definitely not the least, we have the last week in ManageIQ posts. One by a first-timer Hilda, and one by a veteran writer, David, and both are really interesting, so please take a look. And I think that's all I have for this week. Thank you, and next slide, please.
This is Dan. I'm going to talk about the classic UI as usual. And here's the chart of the PRs that were merged. And you can see mostly working on bugs, but getting a lot of refactoring in, as well as some of the enhancement work is starting for Ansible. And next slide. So I dropped a new slide in here. Looks kind of more like an egg than a circle. But anyway, maybe it's just being slammed on my machine here. What I wanted to show here was what the team is, how the team is kind of spreading out the resources, and it would line better with the previous slide, if I would have matched the colors a little better. I moved them around a little bit, so next time I'll try to match them. But you can see obviously the Bizu work is still the top priority. top amount of work. Tech debt as well. Another piece that's in here, though, besides the features, is also PR reviews, and our team spends at least 10%, maybe almost 11% of our time doing PR reviews. So we'll track that as well. As more PRs are done, we tend to do more PR reviews. Next slide. All right, bug fixes. Most of this stuff is just things that have been found in the e-release, and so they're being fixed and mostly backported. There's a few things I think that are being found upstream as changes are made. You can see most of these things are just glaring UI bugs where screens don't work or buttons don't work, things like that. Some fixes to charts. Also, Tendency got a couple fixes, and kind of point out the bottom one there. The initial work on Tendency was like a phase 1, and we really didn't put any effort into trying to secure the tenant admins. And so someone realized that you could create a super admin from a tenant admin, and so we closed that door. So everything's clean there now. Next slide. Some of the tech debt, 3 more trees converted. I think we're down to less than 5 to get done. The tree builder refactoring that's being done was kind of waiting for most of the trees to be converted, so we've got some more of that in. We're trying to finish cleaning up the show partials, splitting out all the sub screens out of there, so we can get more close to the RESTful routes. A little bit of work on drying up the code in the textual summaries. We want to try to push that into decorators and things, so we want to get that cleaned up first. Always ongoing icon image conversions. That project is moving along though pretty quickly. We got a lot of work done, and the button refactoring as well. That's just there's so many buttons that making progress on that incrementally each sprint. Next slide. So on the enhancement side, things are going on obviously in various different areas. Middleware, they added a where you can select the JDBC driver, but they'll cover that in provider slides later. With the move of Ansible Tower to the automation area, some of the classes were changed, so we had to change those references in the UI to make them match. Volume snapshot summary was added to the block storage manager. For the generic objects now, there's delete functionality. We also have a setting now with more and more dashboards, the newer dashboards being shown for providers and in other areas in the future. We added a setting, so it's a global setting that the user can choose which display to use when they show their summary pages. So if you're like a high-level person, you just want to see kind of just the kind of widgets, the charts and stuff, you can set it to dashboard. If you still like to see all of the details of the things you're looking at, we would set it up to initially show the textual setting. Of course, you can switch that anytime while you're on the screen. So some assets were added for EC2 block and storage managers. There's a new VM chargeback tab, and the container group set up a way to limit the number of objects on the topology views. I've got a couple screenshots coming up. Next. So the new summary screen setting, buried down into your My Settings, and you can set which mode you want to be in for initially when you show a summary screen, if the dashboard is available. If it's not, it'll still default back to the textual. Next screen. The container topology limit. So again, down in the settings area, you can actually choose the maximum you're going to show initially. This is only really initially. So when you first pop up the topology screen. So the next slide will show how that affects it. So basically on the center object out, what it does is it looks for the main objects that are connected to that object, and as soon as it goes over the limit that you set, it stops showing all of that all of the object that breaks that limit. So you can see on the top left there, that's how you would normally come in. You'd see a bunch of stuff. If you set it to 20, it'll go down and you'll see 20 or less items. Now, once you're there, you can turn on the grayed out items, to get back to seeing things that you want to see. But it allows for quicker initial display and just can kind of easier see what you're looking for, and then drill into what you actually want to get to, trying to make topology a little bit more usable without things bouncing around so much. And I think that's it. Next slide. Yep, there you go, Chris.
Well, thanks, Dan. Good morning, everyone. So just a quick slide on the overall progress. We had the UI team transitioned to a different project, so we lost a good chunk. But we still got about 44 points completed, so we're still doing pretty good. Next slide, please. Just talking about a couple things that we did high level. We've continued to work to bring over the service tab from the classic UI and just slowly move over the screens. We've created a new mock API system. This system basically simulates the MIQ backend, so you don't actually need to run the MIQ backend for development and testing of the UI. It's pretty lightweight, very easy to use. We've added auto polling on several of the pages, so the services list page, the service details, and the order page, so there's no longer any need to constantly hit refresh to see new things. Next slide, please. We've started to remove the arbitration profile code, and we've also started the process to remove the service designer and blueprint system. Next slide, please. Lots of bug fixes. I won't go through all of those, but we've done a pretty significant amount of bug fixes. Next slide, please. And some new additions. So Roman got done the new visual dialogue editor, so that's now in there. Next slide, please. We've updated the new My Order screen with the new designs from Jeff. And next slide, please. And continuing our work with the UX team, we've also flattened the navigation for the service UI, and Josh got that done for us, which will make hopefully things a lot easier to find what you're looking for. Next slide, please. And that's it. On to Gregg.
Cool. So hey everybody. Despite switching to 2-week sprints, we saw a lot of provider updates in Sprint 53. So I'll talk about some of the notable fixes and features from Amazon, Ansible Tower, OpenStack containers, and some of the updates from Hocular, Rev, Azure. Finally, a quick word on VMware and a special update from Marcel. Next slide. All right, but first, graphs. So we got positive integers, colors, a legend, all the things we expect from a graph. Amazon's taken the lead, and we'll see why on the next slide. So our friends over at XLab, they've been crushing it on the storage manager. Tons of updates from XLab to set the foundations for managing EBS and S3 services from AWS. Some updates from Ansible Tower. Marcel added the event catcher for the Tower activity stream, and James has been working on modeling more aspects of Tower, including projects, playbooks, inventories. On the OpenStack side, it's now using the task queue for cloud volume operations, live migrations, and evacuating cloud instances. So really what this means is that these operations they no longer have to execute serially with the request. So if a request comes in to do one of these things, it can be done outside of that scope. On the container side, they're now collecting custom attributes from nodes. So next slide. From Hocular, they're now allowing server groups to own deployments. So previously, deployments were only identified by their servers, but middleware servers have a relationship between server groups and deployments. So this change just reflects that relationship. And Dan already mentioned this, but they made it easier to select JDBC drivers for data sources. From Rev, they can the provisioning API request can now add disks. Like you can in the UI, but they've extended that to the API. From the Azure side, it's now correctly listing available floating IPs. And this is really just accommodating the idiosyncrasies between cloud providers who have different ways of identifying available floating IPs. Azure and AWS do it slightly differently. All right, next slide. Right, repo split. Marcel and Jason, that's do random and fry guy for the uninitiated. They use their atomic powers of splitting repos to separate the VMware provider from the core ManageIQ repo. So in all seriousness, to me, this represents one of the crowning jewels of the whole repo split initiative. There's still a lot of repos to split out, but VMware has some of the oldest code in the ManageIQ code base. And to see these guys split that out is really impressive. So really good show. And so one quick audience participation. On the count of 3, everybody unmute and give me your best Hadouken. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Nobody?
Totally predictable. Yes.
All right. Next slide. So this next topic is for the nerds. I'm going to hand it over to Marcel. He's going to talk about something that he and Ladislav have been working on for quite a while. So Marcel, over to you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Greg. I take it. I'm a nerd, probably because, well, there will be no screenshots in the next few slides then. So in the last months, Ladias, Adam, and me have been working on something we call now graph refresh. It started out as skeletal refresh, then DTO refresh, and now graph refresh. Though I'm still not really happy with it, as it exposes some implementation detail. Maybe we just call it manager refresh, I don't know. So why did we do this? Well, there was several providers that had need for different enhancements. VMware had the issue to do a sparse collection of inventory. Well, that means only collect objects first, and in a second run, collect the details of those objects. Then REF was running very slow in large environments, so they had to parallelize the collection of inventory. And also in REF, but I guess probably also in other providers too, there's a need for using the event payload data to provide information about inventory to be saved, so that you don't need to run a full refresh when you just want to update, for example, an IP address or something. And then there was Amazon with its 77,000 public images that once you refreshed them, it turned out to be really, really slow and resource-hungry experience. Now, although we'll see some of the improvements later on. And now targeted refresh, that means you don't want to refresh the whole provider, but only a part of it. For example, just a host, or maybe just even a VM or instance. But having that targeted refresh working for something other than a host turned out to be quite complicated. Next slide, please. So just some of the highlights of this new graph refresh. For the independent order of building up that inventory structure. So that means you don't have to necessarily fetch all one thing after the other, but you can do it like in parallel, or you don't even have to know the previous one before fetching the other one. And we also wanted to make it really, really easy to implement for provider authors. So that means you don't have to write hashes anymore, but well, you have real inventory objects as real Ruby models that can be introspected while debugging or while doing stuff. And I think the most important part is that you don't have to touch the save inventory code anymore when adding new providers or manage objects. So that means we can improve on that part of the platform independently than on iterating on the part of at the provider side. While we are still working out some of the details of that API, our focus here is to make it really, really easy and almost a pleasure to write inventory refresh code. So who's using it, Ansible Tower is actually using that part. And Latias did a whole lot of work on the Amazon provider. And there it can be enabled via feature toggle that you set on the settings.yaml file. And Adam was playing with it for VMware. And there are more to come. So next slide, please. Yeah. So no new stuff without something to show off. Here you see some of the improvements that Latias did to the Amazon provider when refreshing that huge amount of public images. So the first table is the first refresh, that is just after adding a new provider, and it would consume, so before it would consume roughly 3 gigabytes of RAM and 20 minutes, and we're now down to just 40% of it. That's 1.2 gigabytes of RAM and 8 minutes. And now the second and subsequent refreshes are memory-wise almost the same, but the really nice thing is the time. And here we're down to 13% from 25 minutes to just 3 minutes. I think that's really awesome and nice. And that's it. Next slide, please.
Cool. Thanks. So from the Automate side, a few enhancements and bug fixes here I want to go over. The first is some new service models that came in this sprint for the Amazon Block Storage Manager. And you see there was a Cloud Volume and Cloud Volume Snapshot also exposed to the service models. From the provisioning side on the back end, we merged in PR that's been around for a little while. Bill and I have been working with the container team for a while to get this one to a good point. So now we have the ability for, if you have, the back end container templates, to be able to provision those and create the new object. So we have some work in progress now to be able to expose that through the UI and through service ordering. So that should be coming soon. And then a couple notable fixes here. One from central admin provisioning. Most of the resources that you see within the UI are derived from the template you select, which locks it into the region you're working in. But there was a few other items, most notably like configuration templates and things like that that are more global, don't really tie into a provider, that were not locked down. So we found those items and were able to lock them into the region that the template was coming from. Otherwise, they're visible in the UI, you select them and it's guaranteed to fail. So good cleanup. And the last one there was the update from the service UI, where you can power on and off services. There were two conditions where you could have an action for start and stop that are undefined, and the code was obviously behaving badly on that. So we cleaned that up to do kind of the expected behaviors. Next slide. Nope. There you go. All right. So the bulk of the work this sprint really went into the Ansible playbook integration. So part of this was creating generic service and generic service templates, which are actually the foundation of a lot more future work, but this is the first place we're using it. So we also have the Ansible playbook now, the service template side that's built on top of that, and you've created methods for use from the API to start to generate these objects. So before it was kind of complicated, I'd say. You send everything into the API. API had to do a lot of work to generate the service template. So we've kind of cleaned that logic up and pushed it down into the models a little bit more, and it'll be a lot more, it'd be easier in the future to add new types on top of all this. So it was a lot of kind of refactoring, rework, but it really helps us, I think, go forward a lot easier there. And then just from the Ansible Power Client gem, which is used in all this, two updates there. One is we've added update and delete methods across all the classes and exposing playbooks off of the projects. I think that is it. Next slide. Go to Gregg.
Now it's my turn.
Yeah.
Okay. So on the platform side, 38 PRs merged. I think it's pretty good for a 2-week sprint. And you can see the breakdown there, a mix between enhancement and bugs, and then technical debt and refactoring follows those. Next slide. So I'll go down, just talk about some of the significant bug fixes. So in chargeback, there was a fix for a rounding issue. Couple in external authentication for LDAP auth, there was a fix that where the initialization was broken and it actually would blow up with a nil error if you didn't select a default group. That was a pretty bad one. Also, and Alberto and Joe V worked on that. And Alberto also made a fix on the UI side to disable the local login checkbox unless SAML is enabled, because it only applies to SAML, so that was a bit misleading. And on the RBAC side, this is kind of a bug. It was reported as a bug, but it's also an enhancement, I guess. So Libor added a bunch of networking objects to RBAC, so those could be tagged, and then they could be filtered through RBAC, and there's a list there. Next slide, please. So technical debt, refactoring, and test. A few things here. So just some refactoring that Shimon did on chargeback, extracting chargeable field from chargeback. So he's been pretty busy over the last several sprints, just making chargeback much easier to maintain and extend. Also, some work on the testing side, remove the UI only spec helpers, since they're not applicable anymore since the repo split. And the normalized job state machine Chris did, that was a pretty annoying sporadic test failure that I think maybe squashed at this point. Knock on wood. And Tim is continued work on MIQ expression, increasing the test coverage on the two Ruby code, because he's about to work on doing some refactoring there. Next slide, please. Okay, and on the enhancement side, primarily Ansible. So some pretty big milestones in the embedded Ansible. So Nick and LJ mainly working on the back end, adding the supporting methods for configuring and starting internal embedded Ansible. Also redirects through Apache to be able to hit an embedded Ansible API in embedded Ansible. And LJ worked on getting the new role in for embedded Ansible with failover, and that controls monitoring and starting and stopping the embedded Ansible. And also, Shimon added an enhancement. I think Dan mentioned this in one of his slides with the new VM chargeback tab. So there's the back end part, but he also did the front end part. And I got a couple of screenshots that he had in his PR that I could show you. So next slide. So yeah, there's the new option there on monitoring, pull down on a VM for chargeback preview. And if you go to the next slide, then you can see the output of that. It's hard to see, but that's a chargeback for a single VM. Thanks, Shimon, for that. I think that's it. I think I'll turn it over to Alberto for the rest.
So on the API side, we had a busy 2 weeks. So first enhancement by Guli, where we're exposing the alert statuses. So we have a new collection / API alerts, showing the first two examples here for the collection and a resource. And he also added the ability to create alert actions for those. So that's exposed as a sub-collection. Showing here the gets on the sub-collection, the sub-resource, as well as the post for creating an alert action. Next slide, please. All right, we have a great enhancement by Tim. So now with the API, you're able to create query as well as deleting snapshots on VMs. So it's exposed as a sub-collection on the particular VM shown here. You can query them all, query a particular one, deleting a snapshot by ID, both the HTTP verb as well as the post delete action. And here's an example of creating a snapshot, giving it the name, which is required, optional description, and memory is optional, defaults to false if you want to snapshot the memory of the running VM. Next slide, please. All right, so Benny did one enhancement for providers, the ability to specify the trusted CA for communicating with a provider, and it's shown here as one of the parameters, the certificate authority, and you can just provide that as part of the post. Next slide, please. All right, an enhancement from Aparna. This is enhancing the options for hosts and clusters, where she needed access to the node types provided for those. So it's part of the data returned from the options. Next slide, please. Alrighty, so one enhancement from Jillian. So previously, I mean, with the tag assignments, I mean, you can assign multiple tags to a specific resource. You know, so you can assign 10, 20 tags to a resource, but we didn't have the ability to target multiple resources at once. So with this, we basically have the bulk assignments. As you could know, you see it's an assign tags action on the collection. Previously, you target the tag sub-collection. So here, you target the collection itself, and you can do a bulk assignment of tags on multiple resources, and one or more tags for each. So it's really, really powerful. So we provided that for both VMs and services. Next slide, please. Right, so we have an enhancement by our team. So here we had previously we had the ability to add an approver, but now he exposed the remove approver for service requests. Again, it's the remove approver action. You can target a particular resource or doing it by bulk. And here you specify, the user by reference, href ID, or the user ID directly. Next slide, please. All right, another enhancement by Jillian is getting ready for Ansible work. So here we're exposing the configuration script payloads. That's the new collection, i.e. the Ansible playbooks. So here you can query the collection or an individual resource. So next slide, please. All right. Minor enhancement to the options. When one of the things we needed for the API clients is ongoing work there to be able to dynamically expose sub-collections and actions and sub-resources. But for that, we needed it. We needed the server to provide us that information, what sub-collections are available for a collection. So you'll see that so you have attributes, virtual attributes, relationships, but we also add these sub-collections, and that kind of drives the clients to dynamically provide all that. So that's work in progress on the other side. Next slide, please. And we have, right, so this, while we added support earlier to query a resource, to fetch a resource by compressed ID, we couldn't filter by compressed ID. So here you could see querying the individual ID attribute or any of the underbar ID attribute name. Part of the filter, you can specify the compressed ID, showing here two examples, ID and storage ID, which makes it flexible. And I think that's it. Next slide.
So that brings us to the end of the sprint review. I just want to say thank you to everyone for making the sprint possible. Really cool to kind of see things progress along at these new 2-week boundaries. I'm amazed at how much stuff actually still gets done. That's pretty cool. Any questions or comments before we sign off here? All right. Well, in that case, thank you very much, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks.